This true crime Halloween spook story begins July 20th, 1969 on Ski Beach in Australia. Best of friends 11-year-old Shane Spiller and 12-year-old Yvonne Toohey are casually walking down the beach. Shane's family only comes to their vacation home near Ski Beach on some weekends and holidays, so when he gets to come to his little vacation home, he always enjoys spending time with his little friend Yvonne. She is a tomboy and they always have a blast together. They have plenty to talk about. Their favorite place to hang out is on the beach. As they chat and walk along the beach, they have no idea that a man is watching them from his vehicle. The man who will become known as Australia's Hannibal Lecter watches them walk and imagines what he will do with these children after he captures them. The thoughts excite him so much that he defecates and plays with himself in his plastic underwear. Yeah, I went there. I really went there. Because it really happened. It's really the truth. And I would never lie to you. It's true crime, remember, not false crime. Very much happened. So, since I went there, well, let me give you a warning. Viewer discretion is advised if you hadn't figured that out, since we are discussing such evil monster and his sick love for children. Hello, my name is Holly, and welcome to the Murder She Shed, or at least I'm in front of the Murder She Shed at a campfire. Trying to set that fall Halloween mood for you guys. I hope it's working. So, this is what's happening. So, welcome to HOLLYWEEN in front of the Murder She Shed. If you have never been to the Murder She Shed before, just make sure you smash that subscribe button before you leave so you can find me in this big YouTube world. I often tell rarely discuss true crime. Usually in my she shed, not so much tonight. Shane is walking a few feet in front of Yvonne when he hears her scream. He quickly turns and realizes a man has a knife held to Yvonne's neck. He raises a tomahawk he was carrying up in the air, and the man yells, "Put that down or I will kill the girl." He panics and takes off running. The man begins to chase Shane as he drags Yvonne behind him. He gives up and picks the girl up and throws her in his vehicle. Shane kept running, but the last words he hears is, "Shane! Shane, help!" as the vehicle drives away. Shane is able to flag down a vehicle that is just leaving the beach, and he tells him what happened to his friend. A search immediately begins. Derek Percy was born on September 15, 1948, to parents Ernest and Elaine Percy. Derek was quiet and likable, a young boy with a bland personality. Students and teachers considered him to be intelligent, and he was always well behaved, at school at least, but never showed any interest in the females at school. His mom Elaine was the boss of the house. Derek had to get permission to go anywhere outside school from his mom, but his brothers did not. Elaine was just extra protective of Derek for some reason. I mean, when he was a baby, she said he looked like a little girl, so I guess she kind of treated him more like a girl than one of his brothers. So maybe she wanted a girl, I'm not sure. In 1964, neighbors of the Percys' clothes went missing, such as bras, panties, lingerie, dresses. They all disappeared off of the ladies' clotheslines. One day, a few of Derek's classmates were walking near some cliffs at the beach when they happened to see a girl dancing in a long pink negligee on a flat rock below them. As the girl turned, they realized that she was not a girl at all, but their classmate Derek. Derek had a knife in his hand and several articles of women's clothing piled up around him, and he began slicing each article with the knife. The boys were spooked. I don't blame them. They ran home. The next day, they confronted Derek, and he denied the accusations. When the Percy family moved because of their father's new job, Derek actually stayed behind at Mount Beauty just to finish his exam. So Derek stayed at the home of a family friend, only friend. His name was Ken Hosking, who lived next door to the Casarado family. The Casarados noticed their daughter's clothing had vanished from the clotheslines, too. Weeks later, a dumped suitcase was found with the clothing slashed and containing newspaper cutouts of women in underwear with the faces, breasts, and their privates cut from the pictures. Also, a doll was found. The doll's eyes had been slashed out with razor blades and the body mutilated. It was around this time that Derek began keeping his first diary with graphic descriptions of his torture fantasies. In January 1965, the Percys went to visit their grandparents in Sydney. It was during this time that the famous Wanda Beach murders occurred. I'm sure you've heard of those. Marianne Schmidt and Mary Sharrock, both age 15, were neighbors, and they headed off their day out with Marianne's 4 younger siblings to Wanda Beach. A witness would later recall seeing a young man resembling Derek trying to talk with the girls on the train. Marianne's brother, Peter Schmidt, 10, said later he saw Mary and his sister walking and talking with a blonde-headed boy. The youth had a knife in a sheath and carried a spear. At that time, Derek Percy was known to actually carry a knife in a scabbard everywhere he went. Witness Wolfgang Schmidt, 7, also saw the boy accompany Mary and his sister into the sand dunes. When the boy returned alone, Wolfgang said he asked where the girls were, but the youth walked on without even replying. The next day, Marianne and Mary's mutilated bodies were found partially buried in a sand dune. Scratch marks on the girls' faces showed they had fought for their lives. The crotch area of one of the girls had actually been just mutilated and cut up. Marianne's brother provided a description of the youth, and a police artist drew up a portrait of a man with a long, narrow face, which actually looked a lot like Derek. The following year at Derek's new school, fellow students who had seen a police sketch of the youth teased Derek about being the killer. In notes found in Derek's car after his arrest, police found a story written by him which bore a striking similarity to the Wanda Beach murders. In his belongings and a tea chest, they also found a map marked at Ride near the spot where the Wanda Beach victims caught the train. Then in January of the next year, 1965, the Beaumont children were abducted, and interesting enough, Derek would later admit to being on the same beach they were abducted from that day, although he never admits to the murders at all. He denies it. The 3 children of Jim and Nancy Beaumont, Jane 9, Ernest 7, and Grant 4, caught the bus from their Somerton Park home for a short ride to Linnell Beach. The trip was meant to involve just a couple of hours at the beach, then home for lunch by midday. A family friend saw the trio at around 11 a.m. talking to a thin-faced man. At 11:45 a.m., the children bought a pie and 2 pastries from a bakery with a $1 note, almost certainly given to them because they had only been carrying coins when they left home. The children were never seen again. When Derek turned 17 in 1966, he called 2 little neighbor girls, aged 5 and 6, into the backyard of his home. They readily followed Derek when he beckoned them inside his family caravan, closed the door, and made small talk, staring at them both with a slight smile playing around his mouth. "Take your pants down," he instructed them, and they did so with the innocence of childhood. Derek was staring at their privates when their mother actually called them back home. Thank God she did. Then that same year, just after Derek turned 18, 6-year-old Alan Redston was found dead at a rubbish dump near a creek. His little body wrapped in filthy old carpet and a woman's housecoat. The post-mortem revealed elaborate, complex bindings far in excess of the bondage necessary to subdue that little boy. Cloth was knotted around his neck. He was hog-tied from wrist to ankles, and his slender body was encased in 3.5 layers of carpet. Alan's killer used electric cable, rope, a man's green and gold tie, and a piece of felt and plastic for binding that little boy. The simple knot suggested of those used to tie shoelaces. Whoever had done it had clearly picked up the items at the dump. He just found them there. He hadn't taken them in advance. A police investigation found that in the days leading up to the murder, fair-haired teenager again had been forcing boys to the ground, tying them up and placing plastic over their heads in an apparent attempt to asphyxiate them. When Derek was young and being cared for by his grandmother, this is strange, it's quite bizarre, but she used a bizarre form of punishment. She would lock him in a room and hog-tie him, feet and hands bound the way little Allen's were. In late 1967, Derek was accepted into the Australian Navy as a naval rating in electrical mechanics. He was able to get leave to visit his family in January of 1968 until March. Between that time, 3-year-old Simon Brooke was murdered after being stolen right from his front yard. A construction worker found Simon's body lying on his back under an overhanging tree, naked from the waist down, his little body bloodied and savagely mutilated. His privates were actually cut off. They were cut off, guys. I hope he was dead first. That would be awful if it happened before he died. Poor little boy, just 3 years old. His eyes were still wide open terror, arms and legs splayed. Little desert boots on and blue socks were on the ground between his legs. Casually discarded was a steel razor blade with its wrapper nearby, the same brand that was actually issued to the Navy. Simon had been strangled and wads of newspaper had been jammed down the little boy's throat. Derek had transferred to the troop ship HMA Sydney, which was based in Melbourne, on July 1st, 1968, but was on leave for 18 days from August 5th, 5 days before the abduction of Linda Stillwell. The Stillwell family had migrated from England 3 years earlier, but by the middle of 1968, parents Brian and Jean had separated. Brian took the youngest of their 4 children with him to New Zealand. But Miss Stillwell found a job at the Albert Park Hotel and she cared for the other 3. Karen 11, Gary 9, and Linda 7. In 1969 at 4 p.m., Gary returned to say that Linda had gone with some boys to a local attraction known as Little Luna Park. When she sent him out again to go get Linda, he returned and said she had gone with the boys to the police station to pick up some fishing rods. I don't know. June Stillwell rang the police to learn that 3 boys had attended the station, but there was no sign of the little girl. Little Linda's body was never found. In 1969, Derek would be arrested for Yvonne's murder after the boy Shane, who actually escaped, had saw his Navy sticker on Derek's vehicle before he could pull away. But it was too late for Yvonne. After Derek was arrested, he led authorities to her little body. He had thrown her body on the side of a road. Yvonne's body is found sprawled carelessly on the earth in rigor mortis, laying on her side under a clump of trees 40 yards from the vehicles. Her slight body hastily redressed in a mauve tracksuit. Her shoes have been thrown away nearby, but her feet are still in ankle socks. A filthy piece of material has been jammed tightly in her mouth, covered by a cloth gag and secured with rope. Her throat is cut ear to ear, a cut so deep she has almost been decapitated. A jagged 38-centimeter wound, 5 centimeters wide, runs from her flat chest to her privates, exposing gaping intestines. Feces stuck with clumps of grass is smeared on her torso, legs, and face. He made Yvonne use the bathroom, and he smeared her feces as well as his own on her body. That's disturbing. They also found nearby several pairs of underwear. I mean, when Derek wore underwear, he wore like 5 at a time, and then he wore plastic over it because he always liked to defecate on himself. That was just his thing. So he had like women's underwear on, and then over it plastic. I mean, several pairs. And they found them kind of slashed and in the bushes and feces all over them. Just totally a disturbed, disgusting guy. In 1970, he was found not guilty of Yvonne's murder on the grounds of insanity and was jailed for life. Somehow, while incarcerated, Derek managed to secretly amass files, clippings, and his perverted handwritten diaries in a Melbourne self-storage unit he rented from prison. He drew all this stuff in prison, and somehow he was able to find a way to move the material from prison to this storage facility. Nobody knows how. For 20 years, the material laid undiscovered until Victoria police detectives were led to a cache and found it in their job to sift through the documents and objects. I don't even know what all that means. Somehow they found it. I don't know if it was wrote down somewhere. I didn't understand that. But somehow they were able to find this storage shed. He must have wrote in on a piece of paper that he had kept this stuff in the storage shed. To their horror, but unsurprisingly, some of the torture fantasies would prove real. A diary had also been found when Derek was arrested, and also some of his gruesome drawings, which no one's ever seen. In Percy's diary, police found a story about the abduction and killing of a 3-year-old. Whose privates were severed with a razor blade, similar to how little Simon was murdered. His writings were filled with disemboweled little children. He also mentioned how feces and urine just really turned him on, and mentioned an interest in nothing else but cannibalism. It wouldn't be Hannibal Lecter unless we added that, would it? So, yeah, that was also a part of his fetish, which I don't guess he ever got to act out that I know of. And like I said earlier, a map was found, which actually showed that Derek was in close vicinity of the locations of all the children he was accused of murdering. I mean, all of them. A chain smoker until the end, Percy died in custody in 2013 from cancer, taking his secrets to the grave as Victoria's longest-serving prisoner. He would never admit to any murders besides the one he was actually caught on, 12-year-old Yvonne. But he was suspected of killing at least 8 other little children. Shane Spiller, Yvonne's best friend who escaped the clutches of the evil serial killer, actually disappeared in 2002. He recalled later I had to walk up and point right at his nose, he said. And the look he gave me, it just really, I don't know, all of his life that look bothered him. It was basically the look that killed him. But apparently the effects didn't really catch up to him until he was about 14 or 15. From the beginning, he had trouble sleeping, though, and grew afraid of the dark. His parents had been advised that he'd get over it and not to mollycoddle him. These were the days before trauma counseling. I mean, you had to be tough back in those days because you did not get any counseling. No matter what happened to you, you just going back to school the next day. Everything's fine. You just deal with it. And you had to. That's just the way it was back in those days. All the way up until the 80s, really. I don't know, maybe 90s. We just had to deal with these things. We had to suck them back in our brain. I never got any counseling until I was an adult and got it on my own after I was abused by my neighbor. It's just, that didn't happen back then. So Shane had to suck it up, but it must have been too much for him to deal with because he got lost in guilt, loneliness, and fear, and then he began drinking at 14. He had been a pretty good student, but very quickly his results went from good to pathetic. He fell out with his parents, left school, and basically went homeless. From that time on, he was a wandering, lost soul. On Monday, September 9, 2002, Shane was a heavy drug user and drinker by then, and he walked to a store from his 2-bedroom shack around the corner to pick up his mail. A few days later, when worried neighbors broke into his house, they actually found his boots in the middle of the living room, dinner set for 2 on the table, his wallet, and his medications untouched. His motorcycle was locked in his shed. They called the police and joined in on the search for him on motorbikes and horses, checking old mine shafts and lookouts. Ever so often, they still go out looking for Shane, but he's never been found. The police have settled on 2 probabilities. In one, they think Shane suffered an accidental morphine overdose and someone panicked and got rid of his body. In the other, more likely scenario, they think, after years of post-traumatic stress, substance abuse, and paranoia, he went into the bush and unalived himself. I somehow don't believe that because, hey, it says the dinner was set for 2. He didn't even take his boots. I mean, you're going to grab your boots? Like, who was eating with him that night? I'm not sure that Shane wasn't also murdered like his sister. It could have had something to do with drugs, I'm not sure, but guess we'll never know. Poor guy. Sadly, in the end, Derek Percy took another victim's life. That's so sad. Thank you for joining me around the campfire tonight, and so glad a boogeyman didn't come out to join me around the campfire too. Ah, God! I did that right at the perfect Nice! You boho! Boho! How loud was that scream? I'm sorry about that. Didn't mean to scream in your ear. You're not out there still, are you? You went in the house, right? Don't be doing that to me again. You about gave me a heart attack. I'm going to tell you, if you made it all the way through that video and you did not push the subscribe button, I'm going to send that boogeyman down to your house. And he's going to scare you like that. I hope you join me next week again around the campfire for Halloween. I'm going to do it all the month of October. Lucky you. Alright, I love y'all, and I hope y'all have a great week. Bye. Eyes that look like heaven, lips like cherry wine. That girl ain't sure enough to make my little light shine. I get a funny feeling up and down my spine. We'll get started on true crime and we'll play like that never happened. I might put it on my bloopers. I might not put it on here at all. Nobody needs to see that. I hope God didn't even witness that. You like my flowers? I'm trying to be all Elvira-like. I don't know what I'm trying to be. I lost everything in a tornado, so I had nothing. So this is what you get. This is what you get. I mean, I don't know where all my stuff is. It's like packed away somewhere, so you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, okay? It's a beautiful campfire, beautiful night, and my husband just happens to pull up in the truck right in the middle of my video. So he'll probably try to sneak around and scare me in a minute. I wouldn't doubt it. If he could figure it out, he probably would. Often tell, rarely discuss true crime, usually in my she shed, but outside tonight. It's your lucky night. I think it's your lucky night. So, welcome to Halloween in front of the murder me shed. Me shed? It's not me shed, it's she shed. I'm going to get this right in a minute. Happy Halloween! I'm glad you could join me here at the murder she shed. I almost said me shed again. I keep saying murder me shed. I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm obviously confused tonight a little bit. Well, I did try to sing Elvira to y'all guys. That'll really mess a person up. But it also contained newspapers cut out of... Here's my baby. There's my baby. I knew he would be here tonight sometime. I'll be in a minute, Bubba. Won't you go in with Daddy? Aren't you cold? But by the middle of 1968, parents Brent... That's a freaking loud truck. You hear that, Samo? You're on my mic again, of course. You're all wrapped up again, Bubba. Wait. Get over here. Why don't you sit on this side of me? You're right in the mic. From England 3 years earlier. But by the middle... I'm almost done. Mama go in the house as soon as I'm done. I know he don't want to go in the house without me, poor little guy. On motorbikes and horses, checking old mine shafts and lookouts. Ever so often...